Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to grab your hairbrush, hide your cheeseburger, and whatever you do, don't trust peas wearing berets. It's very important. And it's berets. Hey, it's berets, not barrettes. Berets.
Yep.
Today on Geek TheoCast, we're talking about the legendary VeggieTales.
I'm ready. I got my hair wet. Now I couldn't find it, and my daughter told me that she gave my hairdresser away to the heat because he actually has hair. I told her, I'm sad. I have hair, and she laughed. None of that, which is true. But anyways, grab those VHS tapes because, well, they weren't just silly. They basically raised a generation of Christian kids on talking vegetables, slapstick humor, and scripture. I mean, it's the perfect combination. It's animated, it's funny, it's hilarious, and let's throw some Jesus in there. And hey, what more could you want? I mean, it worked after all. Even now, parents who were children when it first came out are introducing their children to the videos and the music. In fact, my daughter loves VeggieTales, and her song lately is Good Morning George, because we're going to the Cheesecake Factory tomorrow, and so we sing we sing because we work real hard at the Cheesecake Factory. We start at 8 and we don't get lunch till 3. She gets it, and we just laugh. We enjoy it. And why not?
And don't forget, dancing asparagus is ninja radishes, and moral lessons is somehow hit harder than Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah, beneath all that humor, VeggieTales taught something more important: the message of the gospel that never changes. The media will change, how we share it will change, but the actual message does not. Stephen, I grew up in Sunday school, flannel graph. You know the last time we used a flannel graph?
The 1900s.
Probably. Either it's been that long or I'm that old and I've already forgotten. Either way, we don't use them anymore because everything now is streaming. In fact, even VeggieTales, no longer in VHS, streaming now. Just ask my daughter.
It's true.
So I have to say, I'm very excited that we are talking about VeggieTales.
And while we're on this subject, I feel like it's important to give a backstory of why we're on VeggieTales, and I blame Jason's wife.
Yep.
But we'll talk about that in the next episode. All right, so Jason, why do you think VeggieTales caught on so strongly in the 90s?
Because it was really nice to have a Christian cartoon. It was really nice to have a good Christian cartoon that was simple enough to understand, but yet it kept its biblical foundation.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, kids love story. You know, that's why you have a lot of these kids' Bibles. They're really just story Bibles. You know? And so why not take something like, take a media like video, make it biblical, but make it memorable, like vegetables. Kids don't like vegetables. Okay, there's a few good ones. But you know, kids don't like vegetables, and yet here they are talking and driving cars, and you got Larry Boy, you got all these great things, and it just stuck. Plus the music was good too.
Oh yeah, music was fantastic.
So why do you think those lessons stuck? Why do you think here we are many years later, and we're not just talking about like, oh yeah, I remember once watching VeggieTales, and you know, there's a crazy show that came on called VeggieTales, and no, like we still get it, you know? Why do you think that is? Why do you think talking vegetables made those lessons stick, Stephen?
So, first of all, I want to add on to what you said about the 90s catching on so strongly. For me, I think that it was very much a phenomenon because at that point, if you remember, like in the early 90s, we had Transformers Beast Wars. We had like these very cheesy CGI cartoon graphics that were coming out. And for VeggieTales, they were on par, if not a little bit better than what we had at the time. And it's very edified by like early VeggieTales stuff versus later VeggieTales stuff because the animation was so vastly different. The graphics got better. They look cleaner. The storyline never changed. It was always about the same thing, but it was always nice to see that kind of thing going on. Now, talking about the vegetables that, for me, what made the lesson stick is because, like, in the 90s when we were growing up, like, you had cartoons, and a lot of those cartoons back then were actually talking about moral lessons. You had Davy and Goliath. You had, even like Tom and Jerry and the Smurfs kind of taught a biblical lesson. But like back then, biblical lessons on a Saturday morning cartoon were the norm. Now, not so much. So having the talking vegetables stick was because there were, at least in my opinion, eternal truths that rang out like nobody's business. Jason, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, there's different ways to learn. And like, for example, if you sing a song, you're more likely to remember something.
Right.
Or if you're walking, you're more likely to remember, or if there's just some crazy cue that just you remember this, and all of a sudden that memory just kicks in. And I feel like, again, that's how it was because it's vegetables, and the way that they told the story was fun. Like, don't tell a fib, because I remember watching the Fib from Outer Space so many times. I can take it full fault. She broke the plate. She's very naughty. How was I to know she hated Art Bugatti? But like being a kid and watching the Fib from Outer Space, like I remember that. Even a little fib ends up growing and growing and growing because that's what happened. They made it relatable, not like corny, but like enough to where a kid could understand it.
Right.
And I think that's why, because it was just easy to understand, and you could, a lot of humor, and again, great music. So it was easy for it to stick.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. All right. So then here's my next question for you, Jason. How important do you think the animation style was to its success? I know I kind of touched on this briefly, but real quick, like, let me give my 2 cents. I think it was imperative in the whole scheme of it, because if they wouldn't have done that, they wouldn't have stuck out from, what was the Odyssey Adventures or something like that. Like, it was.
Yeah, Adventures in Odyssey.
Yeah, it was something that was never done before.
Yeah.
And a lot of people thought it wasn't going to work.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like you said, it was on par with a lot of stuff that was on TV at the time. I mean, we look at it now and it's cheesy. But I mean, that's with anything.
Yeah.
I remember a few years ago, I was playing Halo 3 with a friend on an Xbox 360. And when Halo 3 came out, I mean, we were like, whoa, these graphics are so cool and everything. And then, you look at it now with how much it's improved, and you're like, wow, that's so crazy to think that was the best of the best. We actually have, it's called Minnow, and it's the streaming service that VeggieTales is on. Phil Vischer created it, and then there's a lot of awesome content on there. But yeah, like I said, my daughter will watch some of those videos, some of those movies. Watch like Rack Shack and Betty. You watch that one, the Chocolate Bunny, and the animation is so cheesy. And you look at it and you're like, oh my word, like it's cringe with how cheesy it is, but that's because at the time that's what it was. And
Yeah.
so again, I think it was because it was on par. You know, a lot of times there's a stereotype. Well, Christian media is always like years behind of secular media, but yet for VeggieTales it wasn't. It was, you know, it was good.
Yeah, they took a chance and
So, so, you
they
know, I mean,
did it.
yeah. So knowing, I mean, it was serious, but it was also funny. So how do you think the
Right.
humor helped to reach both the kids and the pair?
Okay, so for me, the humor, I'm a big symbolism person. That's one of the reasons I love Chronicles of
Okay.
Narnia. I love the Door Within series by Wayne Thomas Botson. I'm reading a book right now where there's a lot of symbolism that me and Jason got when I was visiting him. There's all these different symbology in VeggieTales, and the humor in it was top shelf. Like we were talking about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or what was it? Sham, Ham, and Benny, right? The humor in it was just hilarious because they were basically saying Nebuchadnezzar is is the big pickle, and be like, "You're going to bow down to this giant chocolate bunny," and they're like, "Oh no!" And like, what's funny is like these songs, as they're coming on in my, like, as we're talking about them, they're coming in my head, and I am fighting the urge to not sing them, which makes this which really makes VeggieTales like unique in its own, because like I said,
Yeah.
the humor helped, but I remember like 10 years ago I put on VeggieTales at a church, and the adults were singing along with the kids, and it was just a fantastic time. What about you, Jason? Why do you think the music contributed so much?
You
Or
mean the humor or the
the
music?
humor? Well, the humor.
I mean, the humor, because I mean it was just downright funny. It wasn't even like, I mean, it was kind of cheesy, corny, funny, but it was one of those that like it just kind of made you laugh. Um, like I said, taking even biblically speaking, you know, some of the lessons, and just, you know, like, let's not dumb it down, but let's make it fun because kids laugh easily, and so, you know, you're more likely to remember something if it makes you laugh,
Right.
and that's exactly what they did. You know, my wife and I quote more lines from comedy shows than any other genre of TV, just because that's what we know, because it made us laugh. And so from time to time, you know, you'll quote something random because you want to make the other person laugh, you know. And VeggieTales did exactly that.
Yeah. And
Now,
go ahead.
no, no, no.
Okay, now when we're talking about stuff that made us laugh, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the music, because we had stuff like, again, the Hairbrush song, and we had songs like the Cheeseburger song, which I actually have a funny story about that actually helped someone go through counseling. After a breakup, we went to Jack in the Box and got the ultimate cheeseburger and was singing the Cheeseburger song. But uh how much do you think the music actually helped with the popularity, such as songs like Zabu?
Yeah. So it that's the beauty of the show. That's the beauty of the movies, the effect that it has, because it wasn't very one-sided. It wasn't like, okay, it's got a good story and like that's it. It had a great story. It had the gospel message, but it also had great music. You know, remember? I mean, here we are. We can name so many songs, because I'm with you there. You know, we could easily play Name That Tune, VeggieTales Edition, and I guarantee you, we would probably tie or come really close to, because we know so much about it. But again, here we are years later, and okay, it's not as popular, but here we are years later, and we still know it. I mean, again, I got my hairbrush right here. You know, every time, I mean, just about every time I hear the word hairbrush, like that's my thought. Or, you know, I'm looking for a hairbrush for my daughter. Where's the hairbrush? And then like, why do you need a hairbrush? You don't have any hair. Or like just some random line from that. Or yeah, everyone's got a water buffalo. You can't say everyone's got a water buffalo. Everyone does not have a water buffalo. How we're gonna get that female saying, "Where's my water buffalo? Why don't I have a water buffalo?" You know, or
I want
yeah,
a
Two
water
Brothers, or
buffalo.
whatever. And that's just how awesome it is because we know all of these songs. I mean, and honestly, one thing I loved about VeggieTales in general is the fact that they, yes, they had music, but they also had like a random song in there, you know?
Yes.
Uh, uh, and now it's time for silly songs with Larry, you
A
know?
part of the
Like
show where
it had
Larry sings a
nothing to
silly
do with the
song.
show, but it was just right? Or now it's time for love songs with Mr. Love, the part of the show where Mr. Love comes out and sings a love song. And I mean, like, it's so random, but yet I think that's also part of it is the music was so good that you could have a song about the actual topic and we remember it, or you
Right.
could have this random song that was thrown in halfway through, and there you go, you know?
Yeah. I completely agree.
So, yeah. So, Stephen, why do you think VeggieTales still resonates in pop culture today, even with non-Christian kids?
So I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's so unique, it's so random, it's so special that when kids are looking at it, watching it, it it's kind of like one of the reasons why I think anime is so popular is because American cartoons have forgotten about the importance of having moral lessons or about teaching something. They're just about stupidity now. And honestly, like that was one of the main things, like back in the 90s and early 2000s, is that they taught lessons, like life lessons to help you, like how to be a better person. It taught them, you know, trusting in God. It taught them um how to find a hairbrush if you're missing it. No. Uh like there was so much impactful stories in those episodes, in those movies, it wasn't even funny. Like VeggieTales was so big that they even got a theater release movie for Christians, which is unheard of for kids' Christian shows. What about you, Jason? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of people, even if they want to deny Christianity, they at least like the moral concept. And I mean, I couldn't agree more with you. Even if people wanted to disregard the Christian aspect, they could at least say, well, at least it teaches my child morality. You know, treat others with kindness and respect, or don't tell a lie. You know, tell the truth, or whatever. And I feel like that's exactly what it is. You know, um, just keeping it keeping it good, keeping it simple. You know. So let me ask you this. All right.
Okay.
How do you think that? How do you think VeggieTales shows the message of the gospel that it can stay the same while medium changes?
Oh, it definitely shows that. Like, okay, so now that we've gotten a little bit advanced, like dude, we're even having anime that's made Christian or an anime art
Yeah.
style that's made Christian. Like one of the books I want to read is called Wink Feather, and like
Okay.
shows like VeggieTales and shows like Wing Feather and other shows shows that the message of the gospel can constantly stay the same, even though the media always changes. Like back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and even the 80s, we had hellfire and brimstone preachers. I'm sorry, you do that today, that's not gonna work. It's not. I mean, it may for some people, but I've seen it more less effective than I have seen it effective. So, like, the medium can always change. The message has to stay the same.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. Again, I agree. I think it, again, I grew up in church and they used flannel wraps to tell stories. And then we shifted to multimedia. I remember when they had overhead projector, you know, and that they put the words up there, or they put in a CD or a DVD, and it would play the songs, and
Pause, Jason. Sorry.
that's just okay. Yeah, okay. So like I was saying, like I remember flannel graph. That's how stories are told. And then we went to like overhead projectors, and we went to like DVDs and CDs and stuff like that. And now I find that everything is streaming. Like you don't even really get files. Everything is streaming.
Yeah.
And so, every things are changing. Uh, okay, we're doing TV. We've been doing TV for a while. How, the nuts and bolts of it are changing, but it's still the same as long as the gospel message is exactly how it is.
Yeah. 100%. All right. So, can you think of other examples where the medium mattered more than the message for reaching a generation?
I mean, like music, the first thing I would think of would be music. Music changes, culture's changing. And the truth is, culture changes every 3 to 5 years, but most churches take 5 to 10 years. And so usually they're always playing catch up.
Yeah.
And I know some older pastors, some pastors I should say, in general, they say things like, "Well, I hate that R word, relevant. I'm not trying to be relevant. I don't need to be relevant. I just need to preach the word." And I'm thinking, no, you need to be relevant because people are just going to ignore you if you're not.
Yes.
How you do things will change, but the message stays the same. And so again,
Yes.
like music, music is different today. I grew up on 90s country. Okay, I can listen to that 90s country into 2000s, like 80s, 90s, and like even 2000s country. I can listen to a few months ago, and I mean this. A few months ago, uh, I was driving to Houston for whatever reason, it's just me, and I thought I'm gonna listen to country music. I don't listen to country anymore, but I was like, I'm gonna listen to like popular country music for today,
That was a
and
mistake.
it sounds like pop. Yeah, it sounds like pop. It sounds like, I mean, it's really, there's really not too much of a difference. Honestly, the only difference between pop music and country music now is country singers have a little bit of a twang, and that is A.
Yeah.
They're still talking about drinking and sex, and the music is very popish, and you got you don't have like in the 90s it was all about like the fiddle and the steel guitar, but like you don't have that anymore, and everything's changed. And so even Christian music has changed a lot. And so I think that um again, the music, but the messages are still the same. You
Yeah.
listen to like 90s hill songs, shout to the Lord, songs like that, which is so powerful. And today, songs are so much different, but yet they're still about the same God. Because the beauty is,
Yes.
you know, we the we're talking about how the medium changes, but the message does not. Guess what? You know what else that reminds me of? God. Okay, God never changes. The Bible says, He's. I'm sorry, the Bible says He's unchanged. He doesn't change who He is. He doesn't change His personality. Bible says Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Like changes. And so that's the beauty is I know I sound kind of like an old person. Well, things don't sound the same. Honestly, like I don't like current country, but that's okay. Like, you know, certain things that have changed that have I can use the word evolve, that's okay because as long as the message is the same. And that's exactly what it is. So hey, I don't care for Southern gospel. I can listen to Christian metal. I think the Lord is okay with Christian metal. Music sounds different, but if those Christian metal bands love Jesus and they're proclaiming the gospel night after night, then I'm okay with that. You're gonna hate me. I hope you don't hate me for saying this. There's one band. Well, actually, there's a few bands that I know of, but there was one in particular that you and I went and saw one night
I
with
know the
a
band you're
third
talking
person,
about.
and
Think about them.
yeah, and honestly, like I love their music, and they preach the gospel like every night. You're
Um,
not going to get that 20 years ago,
no,
and so
honestly, I like
and
them
and
too.
so yeah, yeah. But anyways, so I know I've kind of gotten way off on this topic. We're talking VeggieTales and all that.
Oh yeah.
But the point is, things do change, but the beauty is I'll put it this way: I, if you've watched the newer like animation of VeggieTales, it's I like they were on. I believe they got picked up by NBC, and so it was more like moral based and Bible based, but it was still really good. So don't be afraid of change.
Yeah.
So Steven,
Yes.
uh, do you now let me ask this from your perspective. Okay, kind of going with this. Uh, were you ever told as a young minister that the message and the media had to stay the same?
Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
what happened? How
So
did these people treat it, and what did you notice about it?
I
Like overall,
unfortunately, it was my great uncle that actually said this. Uh,
okay,
I was at my cousin's wedding and I flew in from Sagu. It will always be Sagu. I'm sorry. But it's always Sagu.
Nelson, you.
No, it's not. It's Sagu. Um, and and so my great uncle.
So Steven, do you remember being told as a young minister that both the message and the media had to stay the same? If
I
so, how does that compare to what VeggieTales did?
So yeah, I remember I was at my great uncle's, not my great uncle, at my cousin's wedding, and I remembered coming from Sagu. It will be Sagu forever and not Nelson. Sorry. Um,
Nelson, you.
and
I just gotta give you a hard time with that.
yeah, I know. But you feel the same way I do, so it's fine. Uh, um, and basically, I said the media always should always change, and the message should never change. My great uncle, who was an old school Pentecostal pastor, goes, the message in the media should always stay the same, 100%. I'm like, no, no. What worked in the 70s and 80s will not work today. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, it won't. It can't. The culture has changed. People are
Yeah.
different. So yeah,
It's, nostalgia is because nostalgia only applies to that generation, that
right.
group of people. And when you're trying to get a new generation, you can't rely on nostalgia because nostalgia is, again, is personal. So what you enjoy is not going to be effective. So yeah, I agree with.
Yeah. All right. So Jason, then here's a question. What lessons can today's church, Christian creators learn about using new media to communicate timeless truths? I wish that the church and Christian broadcasting would actually hold on to this because VeggieTales taught us so much on being culturally relevant to the generation. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. No, I believe. Um, well, I'll put it this way. I think the biggest point is to keep the gospel message because as we're saying, the message doesn't change. Why? Because the gospel message is timeless. The message that Jesus spoke in the gospel is still applicable today. The lessons that we can read about that the Israelites had to face, their mistakes especially, are relevant today because you have God, the gods of the Old Testament are still around today and they're still worshipped. They look different, they're worshipped differently, but it's the exact same thing. They don't change. And the Paul's epistles, the theology we get from the New Testament is still applicable today. Because again, like I said earlier, God doesn't change. The gospel doesn't change. And so I think first, keep the message. Don't change it. If you're gonna tweak it to make it more understandable, that's fine. But don't tweak it completely where you have a brand new message. Because not the gospel doesn't need to be a brand new message. Because if it is, then it's the wrong message.
Right.
And so first off, I think for Christian creators today, keep it what it is. But I also believe that don't be afraid to go along with culture. Again, culture kind of dictates like media, like how it's presented and all that. Go with it because Steven, this is what's crazy to me. There was a time where it was seen as a sin to go watch a movie.
Yeah.
In our mind, well, you can have Christian movies. What about a Christian movie? Or you can't listen to the radio. Well, why not? Like have a Christian radio station. So we do. Well, don't read certain books because they're bad for you. Well, why not have Christian books? Why not have Christian authors? You were sharing
Why not have Christian
with me.
fantasy? Good
Uh,
Christian fantasy.
well, I was about to say, I know you love Christian fantasy. I mean, you love fantasy novels. Why not have Christian fantasy novels where you're still, like it's still applicable. You're still in the sense you're letting culture continue to dictate what it looks like, but you're just using that to preach the gospel because the
Yes.
gospel is still applicable. We
Yes.
can we can make it look different, we can dress it up different, but it's still the same message. And so that's just what I would say is don't be afraid to use what the world is using, but just plug in the Christian message and don't change it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the
What about
reasons
you?
C.S. Lewis was so popular is for Chronicles of Narnia because so back then Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings and we know how popular Lord of the Rings is. But Lewis
Great book.
took ideas from Tolkien and made Chronicles of Narnia his own world. And to
Yeah.
this day, it is still one of the best selling children's books there are because it's timeless. It's considered a
Yeah.
literary classic.
Yeah. That's good. So, Steven, how would you, I'm sorry, how did the playful visual medium help shape the spiritual imagination of children, uh, compared to more traditional methods?
Okay, don't get me wrong. Puppets in children's ministry, great. I love it. Flannel graphs, fine. Whatever. Overhead projections, fine. Blacklight dance troops, and great. But human videos ensembles, fine. But there's
Oh, so
something.
many memories of all of this.
But there's
So
something.
many memories.
But there's something about a show that was made for the kids at the time that is impactful and is wonderful and is directly to have
Yeah,
a show like that that is so playful and visually stimulating shaped those spiritual imaginations of what God was really doing or what was happening beyond anything that we have saw in previous generations. It was made strictly that for those kids.
you know, previous as a children's pastor, and I would always tell people I got paid to tell kids about Jesus and act like a kid, and I loved it. Um, can't say I loved every minute of it. It uh, definitely had its moment. But as I look back, one thing that I said, um, as a pastor, like who I am today, I feel like part of who I am as a pastor, how I present the gospel, is because of the impact or because of what I learned as a children's pastor.
Yeah.
Because a children's pastor doesn't take the gospel and dumb it down. Some people may think that. If you do, please don't, because that's far, far, far from the truth. A children's pastor really just simplifies the message. Um, because sometimes we overcomplicate things. And I'll admit, sometimes I do the same thing. I get so caught up in all this other stuff, and sometimes it goes over people's heads. And with a kid, you just have to keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate the gospel message. And I think that's exactly what I think VeggieTales did a fantastic job of doing that, of taking the gospel message and making it easy to where kids can understand it, where they could use their imagination and picture another way to tell the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Right?
Yeah.
We read it in the Bible. We read it in the book of Daniel, and kids' imaginations are just wild and it's crazy. But they took that story and they made it to where kids could understand it. Here's three vegetables that work in a chocolate factory, you know, and they're told you have to worship this giant chocolate bunny or else you're going to get in trouble. And yet they stuck to the story.
Yep.
The three boys did not do that, and they were thrown in the fiery furnace. And uh, they got in trouble. They were thrown in the fiery furnace, and even the main guy, the who represented the king, looked in. Hey, I thought there were three. I thought you threw three people in there. Why do I see a fourth? They kept the story, and it's amazing that how they did it. Kept it simple, but yet understandable for a 5-year-old, a
Yeah.
6-year-old
Yeah.
on up to understand, you know. And if a child like when you teach a child, you don't teach them the same way that you would adults. When I preach, I know how I preach to adults. is to make it, I don't want to say overcomplicated, but like I can add more because they understand more. They get
Right.
it.
Right.
And then an application a lot. But yet with kids, you make it simpler. But here's the crazy part. You ready? Adults still love like those visual things, those object lessons and stuff like that, because
Yeah.
then it's kind of like everyone has that inner child inside, and so it kind of stirs that up. You feel kind of like a kid, and it, it's amazing. And so, traditional methods work for adults, but even for adults, they like those object lessons. They like those extra uh,
Yeah.
uh, object lessons and all that.
Absolutely. So, Jason, if we look at today's media landscape, what modern tools could achieve what VeggieTales did for its
I mean, really, it's just again, it's about how you use what you have.
right?
Don't be afraid to use, as long as you keep the message the same.
Right.
And I think like you can use social media. You can use TikTok. TikTok is super popular with younger generation. Facebook's more for old people. Instagram's kind of that in between. But really, like kids today are using TikTok. Okay, well then why don't you use that and just keep it simple? Why don't you use that to share the gospel?
Yeah.
And you could, you know, I mean, some people, for example, some people say, well, TikTok, oh, that's of the devil. Okay. Here's the deal. If I ever win the lottery, some people are going to say, well, the lotto is the devil's money. Guess what? I'm going to take the devil's money and I'm going to give Jesus what's his. Okay. I'm going to take it and I'm going to bless ministries. I'll bless my church. I'll bless my ministry. Or, I'll bless the ministry of others, of other pastors. I'm going to take it. I'm going to take the devil's money. And yeah, I'll probably, keep it for myself, keep some for myself and all that. But I'm going to use it for the glory of the Lord. I'm going to use some of it for the glory of the Lord. And
I
you know
already
what? I don't think God's going to care.
I already know where $100,000 is going.
Right?
Ashland's college fund.
I mean, there you go. I mean, but like we just you can't look at something and say, well, that's of the devil, because you could literally take anything and it could be used for bad. But
Yes.
conversely, you can take anything and use it for good, right?
Right.
And so, why not use media? Why not use a modern tool? Because that's what VeggieTales did. They knew what to do. Okay, we're gonna share the gospel in a way with stories, but in a way that kids can understand. Reach the next generation. Okay, well, isn't that what we should be doing? What do you
Yeah.
think?
No. I completely agree. I think like some of the modern tools that I would use is I'd use Blender. Use Unreal Game Engine, or I would use stuff that people are using in mainstream media and not be afraid to get in there. Kind of like what
Yeah,
the creator of Fairly Odd Parents is doing. He made his new studio.
yeah,
I cannot wait
yeah,
to see what he does.
yeah,
So I'm truly excited about what he's going to do for Christian media, but I'm also excited what
yeah,
the different people are doing, such as anime style stuff like that. So there's a lot I'm actually
yeah,
looking forward to when it comes to today's media landscape, and there's already people involved that are already using modern tools or starting to use modern tools to shape what's going on. So
yeah. That's all. Well, I know today's episode's been a little bit different. We've more just been talking instead of really diving in, and we'll be diving in later. But until then, that's it for today. It really is awesome that a show of vegetables. Why vegetables? Kids hate vegetables, and yet seeing them be used with slapstick and silly songs, how they could communicate eternal truth without ever actually watering down the message. Imagine that.
Yeah, I mean, and if you thought hairbrushes, dancing cucumbers, and French peas were just fun, remember, real power was in how the gospel was shared.
Yeah. So here's our challenge for you, all of our listeners. Think about the message that you want to share, whether it's with friends or family or online or in person or whatever. Think, how can you adapt the medium to reach them without changing the truth?
So, ladies and gentlemen, grab your
Think about that.
hairbrush, record a silly video, write a comic, or just tell a story. Whatever it is, make it fun, creative, and faithful.
Keep the message timeless and don't be afraid to play with the medium. That's it from Geek TheoCast. We'll see you next time. We love you. Make sure to like and subscribe. Stay in contact with us. Yeah, I don't. By the way, before I say our last bit, I don't know if you saw, but Geek TheoCast posted something on Facebook the other
I
day.
saw that. Yeah.
Just saying. Just saying. So it's still a work in progress, but
Yes.
we're still here. So we love you all. Reach out to us. Do not hesitate to reach out for us.
Yeah.
We love you. Take care, and as always, Excelsior.
Excelsior. All right, clappa. 1, 2, 3. Let's go to the next script. Yes, sirree.
Let's record later because it's almost 11.
That's fine. I am totally okay with that.